I don't think you can extract that out of the experience, especially in a service industry, because you have people and people bring their humanness to it.
Yeah.
And the way we approach it as far as like the variability is we have structures, we have like principles in place around music, around lighting, around heat. We're very specific about like the theme of the class is everything.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Fitness Founders Podcast. I'm Kevin Mannion, VP Marketing here at Glofox. This week we talk to John and Chris Yax from Hot House Yoga, a highly successful family-run business in Norfolk, Virginia. We talk about creating a consistent member experience, keeping your prices high, and keeping your customers happy. They've gotten to over $1 million a year in revenue from their studio. They've got a lot to say, so let's get started. Chris and John Yax, welcome to the show.
We appreciate you having us. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Kevin.
Thank you for being here, and thank you both for coming on. I think it's definitely going to be a very interesting conversation. So maybe, guys, let's start off by just telling me a little bit about Hot House Yoga and, when you got started and how far you've come since you got started.
Yeah, so we opened Hot House Yoga in 2005. It was about a year after we went to our first teacher training. And, it was tough at first. John and I, we had one other teacher, but we were doing everything. And I think that's the norm for most yoga studio owners in the beginning. We were at the front desk. We put on the teacher hat immediately. We go and put the front desk hat back on immediately after class, start talking to people and selling them packages. We go right into marketer and advertiser mode when we have a little time to breathe. We go into janitor mode when we need to clean the bathrooms and fold the laundry and do all that stuff. So we were, basically all in all day, every day for the first year and a half before we brought on our first front desk person. And then by 2007, we opened up our second studio in Norfolk, Virginia. And then I think we actually expanded the Virginia Beach studio, our first kind of flagship location, in 2009. We opened our third location in 2012 and our fourth in 2015. When we started out, it wasn't just John and I, as far as the partnership was concerned. We also had our older brother, Jimmy, involved, and basically he was kind of like a brother. He was a friend of the family forever. He was involved too. So there were four partners. It was kind of like a shoe that stopped fitting as far as the partnership was concerned. And so we broke up the partnership in 2000, and it was actually January 1, 2017. We separated the studios. My brother Jimmy and his wife own the two outright in Northern Virginia, and John and I own the two here. And also it's kind of like the sister company. It's called Yax Yoga Concepts. It's basically the personal development side of what we do, which is teacher trainings, retreats, workshops. And we're actually now transitioning to help other yoga studios repeat the success that we've had.
Got it. The main topic we'd like to cover today is something we spoke about there last week, which was around creating this consistency around the product that you're offering. You guys have obviously, built a yoga studio that's scaled and, a pretty successful business. Do you want to touch on some of the things that you've done in order to have that consistent, classes and offering across all your studios?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because I joked around when we started the studio, it wasn't for financial reasons, it was for passion. And that is exactly why you said, most people get involved, but that's the very thing that keeps them from being successful in it. Not that it's their passion that's keeping them, but it's their lack of understanding of how to run a business. And I would say over the 15 years we've been in business, we built, over $1 million. At one point, it was over $3 million a year that we were in gross revenue between the four studios. Wow. Since we separated, we're still at $1.25 million a year for the two studios that we own and Yax Yoga Concepts. And so that's nothing to bat an eye at. And I would say if you said all right, what's the one thing that has been the real secret sauce to your success is consistency. It's consistency we're in a service industry. So it's the experience that people are getting in the yoga room. So I could jump into that. But what I'll also say is it doesn't end there. It really starts when people walk in the doors. We talk about it when we have meetings. We're listen, our front desk, you are teaching yoga as much as the person in that room saying up dog and down dog. And the way you talk to someone, the way you present yourself, greeting them and shaking their hand and saying hello and treating them like a human being and asking what they're here for and how we can help and really truly being of service in the front of the house is so, so important, and systematizing that. So as John and I removed ourselves from having to be at the front desk and teaching all the classes, making sure that the people that were taking our place understood what it was that their job actually is to do. now, like, so if I would boil it down even more, it would actually be when someone walks into our studio to take a class, regardless of the teacher, they are going to get a consistent experience, which is so important for their development and the success of the studio.
And how hard is it to do that in practicalities? Because I'm sure lots of businesses end up being dependent on one or two or three trainers who are doing their own thing. How do you kind of create that control and that experience?
So we kind of stumbled into it, Kevin, when we first started. Because of our martial arts background, Chris and I, we knew that consistency worked. And in martial arts, you practice a technique and then you spar. So like if you're not consistent with the technique, you get punched in the face. You get real feedback real fast. So we understood how consistency is so important as far as development goes. And so when we got to a point where we needed help, we needed other teachers to come in, we were sending people back to the teacher training that we did. And then when they came back, we spent 2 to 3 months training those people to teach just like we taught. That got old real fast. We realized this needs to be faster. We need to be more proficient around this. And so that's when we started our own teacher training in 2008. And that was one of the keys, Kevin, because when we started our own teacher training, we could teach our teachers exactly what we taught and how we taught and the methodology that we use and the consistency and the therapeutic vision, all of the pieces that need to be understood as teachers that we spent months and months retraining these people in. We could do it right away. We developed our own teachers. They came out. We picked the cream of the crop out of those trainings, and we knew that it was consistent. The other piece to that is that we would coach them, and then we eventually hired coaches to come in and take their classes and help develop them as they're still teaching. So that really created that level of consistency. And the other thing was we got to a point where we said, okay, these are the two styles. It's actually one methodology that we use, but we do that methodology expressed through just 2 styles in our studios. And they work at like stepping stones as an approach for students coming in. They start with the call it easier style, and then they advance in that class and eventually take the other class, which is a more challenging style. The first class is completely consistent. It's the same every time. And the second class has the ability to be unique as the teacher wants to develop it, but it still follows that methodology. So the key is that consistency is born from us doing our own teacher trainings and continually coaching and helping our teachers become better teachers.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. One thought that occurred to me is how do you get the balance right between that and having people bring some new ideas into the business? Or does that happen?
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, it's interesting when you look at it and you take like human psychology and like what the needs of we all have, like consistency is one of the most important things. Like, and we know it to be true. Like if you go to a restaurant, you go to that restaurant because you like this specific meal. And when you go there, you always get that meal. Yep. And if that meal were to change, and depending, like if there's a different server that you had, all of a sudden you're getting a different experience, or a different chef, you're getting a different experience, you're not going back there, right? And so what we know, and especially if you then take that into account with the amount of new students coming into your studios, the rates it's so high. It's like between 70 and 80% of the people you have every year are new people who have never experienced what you have. So we really hold strong with consistency. Now, the variability and the growth and the evolution, like leaning to the question that you asked, I don't think you can extract that out of the experience, especially in a service industry, because you have people and people bring their humanness to it. Yeah. And the way we approach it as far as like the variability is we have structures, we have like principles in place around music, around lighting, around heat. We're very specific about like the theme of the class is everything. And I feel like in this day and age with yoga, it's gotten very fitness oriented, and rightly so in a certain way. But sometimes in a lot of areas, what happens is the deeper principles, the deeper, like I'll call it spirituality, has been stripped out of it. And so what's really important for us is for a teacher to know that the creativity that they have is in what they want to talk about, what we call a theme of the class, which is this larger message that we can all like universalize, that all human beings deal with, and the solution and the problem that is presented within the class by the teacher. So there's what's baked into this. Like at first it was kind of a tough balance to strike, was we want to be consistent because we know that's what people are looking for, but we also need that variability. And what we found is we're getting the variability not in the sequence changing all the time, that is in the flow class where they do have the liberty of changing the sequence and adding different poses as long as it follows the methodology. But there's this whole other level of the atmosphere that they're creating, that they're in control over, to create a feeling for the students that is what happened. Like the nature of it is that one teacher is going to present that slightly different than another teacher. And in that is the variability that people eventually fall in love with.
Got it. And tell me this, it sounds like within the four walls, you've got things pretty nailed down. How do you extend that experience beyond the walls and how you deal with people and how you maintain these long-term members?
Yeah, it goes to the next two needs, which is significance. People want to know that they exist and that they mean something, and then just connection, reaching out and doing simple things that make them, it's as simple as know their name when they come in, have a conversation, know what they're going through in their life, and just extend a hand and ask them simple questions about, hey, how's it going? But not in a superficial, I've been asked to ask you this way, but actually care. And I think there's a cultural thing that has to happen from the top down, in my opinion. If it's lost, and this is the way John and I feel about it, it's our fault. If there's something that's going wrong in the studio, I'm 100% to blame for it. And because of that, it also gives me the power to know that, I can make the change. And if it is, I'll own it and say, listen, I'm sorry, I'm human. We made a mistake. It wasn't the right call. Let's correct it. And then if anyone needs to say anything, let's have a conversation about it. What's so interesting is that we're teaching yoga, and that's what it's all about. It's really about relationships. First and foremost, the relationship with yourself, and then that relationship extends out to every other relationship. And so it's funny because we're very business, make sure the structure's right and consistency, and you have the front end, the front of the house, and the back of the house right. But within all of that is baked the principles of yoga, which is connect, be real, give love, be compassionate, know your boundaries, hold the boundaries, have the policies in place that help you create better communication with your people. So
I'll just add to that for a moment. The two most powerful personal development tools that we've come across, Kevin, first yoga, obviously, right? Because I'll be real clear. It's yoga practice, obviously, when you get on your mat and you do the poses, but that's just the catalyst to get the mind to begin to settle. And then to practice meditation, to sit on a meditation cushion daily and do that work. And then the second would be entrepreneurship. When you put yourself out there, you take all your savings and throw it into a vision that you have that's going to have an effect that's literally going to change the world. Entrepreneurs are the leaders that change the world, that truly change the world. They're the ones that make the difference. And within that, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, it requires us to do the personal work. It requires us to expand out of our comfort zone and become somebody that we aren't yet.
Sure.
In order to succeed, Does that make sense?
It does, 100%. And I just have one last question before we move on, and that's just back to the basics of saying hello to people at the door, caring about the people coming through. Is that something you just need to make good hiring decisions about? Or do you think people can learn and be trained to do that?
Honestly, it's good hiring decisions. You can have systems and processes in place as far as hiring goes, but the person's got to match. They got to match the role that they're in. If you have someone who's socially uncomfortable and they're at the front desk meeting new people, it's probably not going to work out well, for them. And I'm not going to try to teach a fish how to climb a tree. But if there is a monkey who just needs to know how to climb better, we can help that, But if the person's just not right, they're not right. I think it mostly comes down to hiring the right people.
One of the first front desk people we hired, Chris and I realized this is way, way, way back. One of the first people, and we didn't know how to hire anybody. Somebody walked in and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." We're like, "Cool, you're hired." Probably a week later, you come into the studio, Chris and I walk into the studio, and she's supposed to be working behind the front desk. She's nowhere to be seen. We literally could have gone around and just taken the whole cash drawer and ran. And so we look all around the studio and she's nowhere to be found. And we go to the back of the studio, to the back door, and she's out there smoking a cigarette. We were like, all right, this is not good. So a couple of days later, in another incident, we ended up letting her go. We got to figure this hiring thing out better. And the last thing she said was, does this mean I'm not going to come to my shift tomorrow? You're like, yes, you are done. Bye-bye. So, it's one of those biggest lessons is hire slow and fire fast.
So I think the second topic, guys, we wanted to talk about today was around pricing and value. And it's something you guys are pretty passionate about. Do you want to maybe start by telling me how you address this at Hot House Yoga?
Yeah, I think our first mistake was that we thought that yoga should be for everybody. And so when we were messaging it, we're like, hey, everyone, you should do yoga. The second mistake was what you described, which was we wouldn't put our prices high enough. And specifically, like the front end introductory offer. What's really interesting is that when you look around at the yoga community, almost everyone does what's called a low barrier to entry offer, which means, for us, when we first started, it was like everyone who comes in gets a free class. Well, free literally has zero value. And so it doesn't compel people to stay. It doesn't compel people to perceive what they're getting and the value of it. They don't increase that perceived value at all. And so what's like pervasive in the yoga industry right now is low barrier to entry offers, meaning someone can come in and do 30 days of yoga for $30 or, $10 for 2 weeks. And what ends up happening is there's this misperception of price and value and the fact that money actually follows the value. So the answer for us is, how do you increase the value of what you're offering? And it's related to price, but it's also related to what actually adds value. And there are 3 things that add value. One is the story behind your service or product. So I can tell you, one of our mentors, this guy, Stephen Larson, he has a story that he tells about, he has an American flag that's hanging up in his office. And if you ask him like, hey, how much is that American flag? He was like, oh, you can get it online for, $10, $20. I'm like, okay. But then he tells this story about this senator who had it hung at the White House specifically for him for 7 straight days. And that the serviceman that took it down folded it specifically for him and then was delivered to his door. And all of a sudden, the story that's wrapped around that experience increases. So now if you asked him like, hey, how much does that American flag cost? The value of it is through the roof because the story behind it has increased the value. And so that's one way. You increase value through story. You also increase value because like if someone comes in to practice yoga, what we're doing is we're solving a problem for them. And what happens when you solve one problem is that you make new problems. So if I come in to practice yoga, well, that's good because I have back pain and I want to heal my back pain. So I'm coming to yoga and in my mind, my back pain is already gone even before I've ever even taken a class. But the second problem that comes up is, oh, wait a second, I need a yoga mat and I need some water and I'm going to sweat a lot. And so I need some clothes that are going to help me. Like, so all of a sudden for us, it's like, oh, what are those follow-up problems when they come into a class that we can help solve and then either embed it into the package that they're going to buy and in doing so increase the price and because we're increasing the value of it, or we can then so for us, we have an online funnel that we do our introductory and then there's an option for what we call an order bump to get unlimited mat rentals because we know once they made the commitment to come in and buy that intro, they're going to need mats. And so we're going to solve that problem immediately and they're going to pay a discounted rate depending on how often they practice. And so that's just another way of adding value. But what happens in the experience of studios is everyone is racing to the bottom. They're racing to the very lowest price. And so if like the so-and-so studio down the road is having a 30 for 30, I'm going to do a 20 for 30. And then someone else is going to open up and they're going to do, I'm going to do 10 for 30. And everyone is literally putting themselves out of business by not charging what they're worth and not understanding that money follows the value. And if we can present more value for people, we can actually charge more. And here's the craziest thing is that people, because they perceive it as higher value, they're more committed. They pay more attention. And with anything you've bought, if it was cheap, you don't really care what happens to it. The moment it's expensive, you are taking such good care of it that you would never let anything happen to it. And it's the same thing in the service industry when we're helping people get healthier and happier.
And how do you get an intro offer right? Because I think we all understand the idea of long-term having a high price related to high value and outcomes. How do you get the balance right in that intro offer in terms of removing the barrier versus keeping the perception of value?
This all depends, Kevin, whether the studio owner, what they want to offer, because there's a company called Yoga for the People and they have a studio in New York. And then I think it's probably been some years now, but they opened up in LA. They're all donation, total donation. And they're successful enough with just doing donation classes to be able to open up 2 studios. Now notice they're in New York, crazy demographics, high density. And in LA, same thing. They're not opening up in the middle of West Virginia somewhere, but somebody can. If somebody has support on the other side, they can offer a studio and do very low prices or free or donation, however they want to do it. So we're not saying people shouldn't do that. They can. But what we're saying is that if you are trying to have a successful business without having a corporate job, a 9-to-5, something on the side, then you need to understand business and you need to run it like a business. Now, one of the keys to having this shift or finding the balance of what is the right pricing to offer is creating a compelling offer in the front end. Meaning you put together, because what people really want is they want to be out of pain. We have to understand what are the pain points of the people that are coming in and actually wanting to practice with us. It could be physical pain, it could be stress, but we want to create a package, a front end offer that's going to address that pain. And then, like Chris said, also address the other problems that are going to come up as they move through it and start to discover themselves in this practice, meaning coming in and having a certain amount of classes. Maybe they have a more personalized, smaller group class that all these new people come to. And then you have a meal plan on top of it, because of course, when they come in and start feeling better, they're going to want to know, well, what do yoga people eat? How do I eat to feel better? Having a meditation component to it. And so the front end offer becomes an actual offer and not just, hey, come and practice at my studio for a month for $20. Right? You charge more because there's tons of value with it. You're actually making a difference. You're taking them out of pain. You're transforming their lives, and you're charging whatever your demographic can handle with it. But you could literally charge upwards of $300 or $400 for that package. Now imagine this, Kevin, somebody coming off, they paid $400 for 4 weeks of yoga. They went through this whole program that you put on for them. You changed their life. They then look at your pricing options. And if your unlimited is $150 or $100, they're not going to bat an eye. They just paid $300 to $400 to do this 4-week program. And now they're looking at an unlimited with you because you already indoctrinated them into your practice. They already understand what you're doing. They look at that like it's a deal. Oh, you mean I can do unlimited for $150? I'm all in. That's one of the keys is crazy amount of value on the front end. And then your selling and packages on the back end is simple.
The only other caveat is you got to deliver whatever you're saying you're doing and all the value that you're saying you're going to present. If it doesn't match what they've actually paid, then it's not going to work. The last thing is you just got to test because, different markets will hold different value and different price. You don't know until you try it. But I would say, push the limits, see what happens, and then make adjustments as you go.
Yeah. And I was going to say there's probably two elements you haven't mentioned to it for any business owner. The first is to figure out how to package these things up. And the second is to be able to sell them face to face to the customer. Did you guys kind of learn this on the job, or how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, this was on the job training. I mean, had a business and a degree in international business. And so I had schooling behind it. But quite honestly, and nothing I learned in that is relevant to what I'm doing right now. Even on the business level, I guess I got like a broader perspective of what's out there as far as what the value of my schooling was concerned. But honestly, we've been in the service industry, John and I, and basically the whole family when we were in high school and through college, we were waiting tables. And so you got to know people, you got to understand how to, just offering the upsell of like, hey, would you like the higher level liquor? Would you like the appetizer? Can I get you a dessert? Like little things like that. Yeah. And then understanding human behavior. We didn't go through any formal training, but it was just years and years of being in the service industry and dealing with people and understanding what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're matching is like, just, you got to know what is it that they're looking for. And even before that, I would say, Kevin, is you got to know who you want to serve.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, like most yoga studios are like, man, we want to serve everybody. Well, you're not going to speak to anybody if you want to serve everybody. You may be able to fulfill and solve different problems like stress relief or back pain or just alternative fitness. But in the messaging, you got to be clear about who you're talking to so that those people hear it and then take action on it. So,
yeah. Would you be right? Would you agree that if somebody is maybe reluctant to become a salesperson, to ask for a decent price for their classes and their memberships, that maybe a starting point is really getting a good understanding and belief in themselves around the problem they're solving and just expressing that?
100%, Kevin. That goes back to what I was saying. Entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful personal development tools ever. Again, that's what we end up bumping up against. When we started on this journey, we thought sales was a nasty word.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to try to sell people this and this, but the reality of it is I can't change somebody's life unless they're willing to commit to me, right? I can't make a difference in somebody's life unless they're willing to commit to our process. And so knowing that my process, the process that we teach works, I have 100% confidence in its ability to make a dramatic difference in people's lives. So Chris and I have gotten to this point that we're not scared to sell. I'm all about telling somebody that I can make the difference in your life. I can get you out of pain. I can do what you want, what you need in your life if you're willing to commit to me. And this is what it means to commit. It's worked in my life over and over again. One of our teachers said, the more people pay, the more they pay attention. Yeah. And what I've noticed in my own life, and Chris and I have, in the last 5 years, have spent so much time and money on coaching and working with higher end coaches and business coaches and all personal development coaches, people that can really dive into where your blockages are, what you're bumping up against. And money issues and sales was a big one for us. And in order to break through that, we just have to say, okay, I got to commit. I got to expand past who I think I am and be able to make this work, because I want to help people and change their lives. And at the same time, I want to change my life and my wife's life, and my kid's life, my brother's life. There's people that are riding on this. And so we also have a big enough why to drive us.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, we're getting close to the end. I wanted to finish with our standard question, which is, tell me about one of the biggest mistakes that you guys have made so far in your business and what you learned from it.
I'm going to go way back. I mentioned before when I was talking about when we opened up Hot House, we had 3 teachers. And one of the biggest mistakes we made in the beginning was we didn't have that consistency as a culture placed in the system yet. And so the other teacher, the one that was not John or myself, she would basically, any class, it was a free for all. You didn't know what you're going to get in the class. And it's funny because certain people didn't like it, but a lot of people loved it because they wanted to be entertained. And we're like, we're not about entertaining people. We want to actually help better your life. And so if you're looking for entertainment, go somewhere else. But in the beginning, what we didn't do was we didn't have a structure. We didn't hold to it. And the relationship with her ended up breaking down and we had to let her go. And what we found was that there was a good portion of our students who left with her.
Wow.
And so the mistake was not holding the structure of what we knew to be true. And I'm not saying it's the right and the absolute truth, but just for us. So what was such the big lesson was, for the success of this studio, long term, we cannot have it be a teacher-based studio where teachers can do anything they want, anytime they want, and it's there running the show. It has to be a class-based studio where students know what they're getting. We have awesome teachers. They're amazing. They get to have their own creativity, but in the ways that we deem fit for the culture that we've created.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great answer. Chris and John, before we say goodbye, maybe tell people where they can find you guys and what's next for Hot House Yoga.
You can reach out and find us if you're in the area, because Hot House Yoga is local in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Norfolk. You can check us out at hothouseyogi, that's yogi.com. If you want more of the information that we have a podcast called Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. It's this new endeavor that we're doing to help yoga studios and yoga entrepreneurs understand the business end of it, the marketing end of their business, so that they can thrive and help more people help themselves. And we have a Facebook group called Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets as well, that if you'd like to join, we do live trainings on all the stuff, like we're documenting what we're doing right now. And one of the things that we're super excited about is we're going to be pushing the limits with our introductory offer for Hot House. And we're going to, everything that we just talked about, we've been implementing, but we're like, you know what, let's see what really works and let's add as much value as we can and see how much change we can make in people's lives on the front end and to see how much revenue we can generate. And we'll see how it goes. And it may fail, but we're pretty sure it's going to be a success.
Okay, well, the best of luck. All right, Chris and John, thank you very much for coming on the show. This podcast is brought to you by Glofox, a boutique fitness management software company. If you want to accelerate growth, work efficiently, and deliver a well-branded boutique customer experience, you can find us at glofox.com.